Welcome everyone, and we're back to the first round of the Spoils of Vaul August tournament. Today we have Fuziorak playing against Mr.Sleep Necrons. Will this be Return of the King? Who knows? But let's take a quick look at the map and a couple of food outposts for Tau, even more further up. Not the best resource, as we can pretty much ignore food upkeep. But of course nice to have an ore field. And looks like Mr. Sleep will be asking for a restart. Didn't get a chance to look at his Alright, let's get back on Gladius. This time, despite all the jungles, there are a couple of ore fields, which is of course quite nice, and a couple of close shops as well. I would say a good start for Tau, and for Necron we do have a decent starting tomb. We can always try and settle this one instead. Yeah, goes for it. It is still good research bonus, but also production and of course rocks for ore. And I suspect this will be a Summoning Core, Energy Core, Summoning Core. Once again. Yeah, grabs his ruin. Sadly can't see what he's got. Not an item, not research. I guess it was energy. Yeah, Tau settles on research. It's himself. He does have some research on Crane, so that is of course a nice bonus. Let's see how many production buildings he will get before builder drone. Usually we have at least 2. And of course interesting to see what kind of build it will be. Although I don't think you really want to play Breachers against Necron because of flayed ones. You won't be able to use their Overwatch with well. And for Necrons, I think it's pretty clear that this will once again be a lot of flayed ones, maybe with some heavy destroyers later. And of course with some reanimators. As a tier 2 unit, reanimators are pretty busted. It seems to be a staple of Necron play now. Alright, Relic in the middle will go to Necron, since he positioned his main so forward. He didn't really have much choice, he can only see 2 tombs on his starting line, on his starting position. And if we look for other relics, there are a couple more on this side. Actually, there is even a third one here on Tau side, so that is 4 relics here. And that leaves the last 1/5 in this corner. Which you could argue is also pretty Tau favored. But of course, not that easy to reach it, maybe with a Piranha. And looks like we're still trying to play Breacher Fire Warriors. Already bought a dog. Dogs are very nice, of course. But again, the problem with Breachers is that Flayed ones are going to ignore their main mechanic. More powerful Overwatch. Which means you just won't get the chance to use them. The reason he gets Necron Warriors first is pretty simple. He takes extra production on the core before Flayed ones, which is why he just don't have Flayed ones stacked on time. After barrack, since we are not on rocks, we are definitely pretty tight. Right, Fuziorak. Actually, well, yeah, looks like he will be capturing the artifact first. No fights, focusing down coolhounds, as I have 0 armor. But of course we will still provide a lot of value just by capturing outposts in the back. And Mr.Sleep follows up with capturing a Silent Caster himself next turn. As we can see, with the build, no surprises. Meanwhile, Fuziorak is finishing his second barrack, no armor attacked. So it will be interesting to see what's going on here. Capturing another tile, might be waiting for that builder drone. Though a bit too early, unless he was buying research. Yeah, but tech and shard bonus, bonuses, stacking provides a decent boost, like 33% increase in total. Which can be hard to deal with early on. but Tao of course can buy neutral units. So far on the bot one dog. And this banking fair bit of influence. Builder drone is indeed tagged and looks like he skipped a turn of production. Well, production overflow suggests that he didn't, and alright, yeah, now it looks like he did skip a turn, waiting for the builder drone to research. And Necron might be on his way to taking Canoptic Spiders. Gets Dimensional Corridor on tier 2. I think it was moved up from tier 1 some time ago, and it might actually be a very nasty buff. Yeah, just finished the Canoptic Spider hack. And it definitely looks like Necron will be able to expand faster and have a big army than Tau. At the same time, might feel a bit unfair. And the question is, what Tau should do to amend that? The usual solution is to get Skyrays and torture your opponent with 3 kills every 5 turns or something like this. But yeah, we have 4 Fire Warrior squads stuck here, clearing Katachan Devils. While Necrons are looming closer to our main. Yeah, looks like Mr.Sleep will settle one of those tombs for energy, since it's desert, and maybe this one for ore, but might settle safer somewhere else. Didn't get a single Canoptic Reanimator. Right, done with simultaneous turns, and now we can watch this game unfold in peace. very scary thing to see. Yeah, after third barrack we have to build all, even if we have a little bit of a bank. Although of course that bank can help you last until you get an ore city, but there's really no ore city inside, so we'll have to build on those rocks anyway. And Slaver decided not to run away and instead to pursue fire warriors, gets eaten for that, but capturing a relic around for ambles might be a bit challenging at the moment. Of course you would love for ambles to run into breaches Overwatch. Boss extra damage and armor penetration are gonna work very well against ambles. And funnily enough, Breacher's Overwatch might be helpful against Canoptic Race and especially against Praetorians, Triarch Praetorians, but sadly not against Flayed ones. That annoying translation of ability. Makes Breachers pretty useless in this matchup. Looks like we sped up second spider, so there is now a conga line of spiders moving forward to settle. Again, the tombs we are going to use, I believe, something like this one and this one, but maybe, I think some combination of two tombs out of those three. But maybe I'm wrong. Let's see. Could be two production tombs even. So This one I don't really feel like worth getting. And those guys walk out onto a ruin, getting temporary shield out of it. Won't be useful for a while, so no real downside to not getting it earlier. And you can see he tagged Arsenal. Makes sense because you definitely need those Skyrays, or at least Hammerheads. Yeah, sadly this is not even close. Drops the city in the middle of the map. And I guess a second one will be indeed here. A bit scary against Tau because Hammerheads. But until Hammerheads can't really do much, and looks like Tau will be dropping his city on this ore field. Hopefully without getting mocked by a flayed one in the process. I think might have been better on this style, but of course can't settle it because of the newfound Necron city. But yeah, at this point Necron can't really stop it from settling, and I don't think he's planning to anyway. Yeah, with those cities, Necron doesn't really have good ore tiles, so that will become an issue as long as the game progresses without huge fights. Might be the card for Tau to play. Go for 2 ore cities and just make Hammerheads. Chickens out of moving forward to settle city here. Looks like we'll be going to settle this ore field first. Scouts with a drone. Still has 2 turns. And can actually see another city popping here. So that is 2 cities right in the middle of the map. There is a nice annoying cliff between them, making it hard for them to defend themselves, or to help them defend each other. But this cliff on the other hand makes this one city in particular very hard to attack. Even if you camp on range 3, you're basically cut off from retreating. And it is the third city. It was like a couple of turns later than the second one, but still is the weakest. And we can see Mr.Sleep opening up with capturing a shard, which hints at the lack of energy as well. Indeed, he had almost no energy bonus, didn't take. Actually, by now he did take +1 energy from energy cores. It is a tier 2 tech, I believe, and he wasn't present for a while. Finally, a first reanimator. Again, very capable unit for tier 2. It has a very nasty range 1 overwatch. It also regenerates surrounding Necron units. Not to mention it is just very tough to kill at this point. And Fuzio decides to settle a little bit further away from the city. Does not take the sword field, instead gets Skull Altar. And the city on grassland, not rocks, to immediately go into a barrack. Still no crisis suits. And I would just like to mention again that breachers just aren't that good against flayed ones. They die into heat, so you can't really frontline with them, and they can't use Overwatch against flayed ones, which is their gimmick. Extra powerful Overwatch on their pulse blasters. And yeah, now we can see Tau is stuck for a while on just 2 barracks. Necron on the other hand has 3 barracks with boosted stats from tech and tiles. Allows him to get more units out as well as settle faster. So unless you aggressively buy neutral units as Tau, you can't really fight at this point, at this stage of the game. Have to respect the Necron and just protect your base for the time being. Again, you are looking to get some powerful units first. Usually it is Hammerheads and Skyrays, but against flayed ones, even Crisis Suits should work. All of it, of course, takes decent damage from heavy destroyers. Another options you have as Tau are, for example, Pathfinders. The reason you don't want to make them is similar. They can't use their Overwatch against flayed ones, and that means you have to attack with them first and they are gonna die in one hit, or almost in one hit to flayed ones. For their cost, very hard to use. Although if you can make good use of them, they can be extremely strong. They have they have drones that can block tiles with gravitational fields. again can be very strong against flayed ones. And their attack is pretty devastating as well. Other options that we have are two kinds of Krutox Riders, Krutox Rampagers and Krutox Riders. Rampagers have better armor, but they do not have a range-free gun. Riders, of course, have that extra bit of utility in the form of range-free gun. But die extremely easily for their cost. Which is why, again, you do not see them that much. Exorcist usually just builds fire warriors, not even going for crisis suits most of the time. And here we can see Fuziorak is trying out some type of Breacher Fire Warrior strategy. And they can definitely work against a lot of range 1 units or melee units, but sadly against flayed ones in particular, extremely weak. Still a lot of influence banked. We might see some monstrous suits later. Ghost kills should work fine as a damage dealer, although you of course do not want them to get hit. That will take a while, and at current rate, unless someone deliberately loses all his army trying to siege a city, this game should take a while. Yeah, that cliff is very annoying. Makes it extremely hard to fight over this part of the map, especially if you have a range 1 higher army like this one. But yeah, Tau are in their development phase, getting that second builder drawn out, etc. And we can see that heavy destroyers are already researched. Had to get the second tile before actually building. Yeah, you can see he's struggling with resources. It is a struggle with energy, and he will for certain struggle with ore as well. Right, scouting with your gun drones. I don't think you want to do anything with this. And more importantly, you can't really do anything with this. Because this army is just not suited to attack this kind of stuff. Even if you just try to shoot enemy units, look at this, it takes like 4 or 5. Yeah, it takes 4 or 5 of your units to kill a single Necron unit. This is going to backfire if you try to attack, even in the open, when it takes 3 units. The Necron will just counter attack like this. Not going to be pretty. I think we're also kinda sleeping on blind grenades. Photon grenades were called. Maybe we could rework them so they're a bit more useful. They used to be a free action on tower release, and that was pretty much busted because fire warriors could run in, like blind one squad, shoot half of the other squad if you play against something like Astra Militarum, and then drop a drone and pin a third squad, effectively disabling 3 squads at the cost of 1, which was pretty strong. Nowadays, photon grenades are not a free action, and that is why you barely see them, because they do not do much damage, but they do blind, and a lot of the times you just want the damage to finish off a unit. I think our meta is yet to develop to the point where it actually makes sense to blind units, aside from situations like Chaos Lords moving around or enemy having big monstrous creatures. In that case, in those cases, it is pretty straightforward, but blind grenades can be useful. I think what we could really do with those photon grenades is like give those little guys a trait that protects them from melee attackers, because that is like the whole purpose of photon grenades as defensive grenades on tabletop, using them as an overwatch to blind attackers and prevent big damage. And if we do this, this might stop being such a hard counter. And maybe it will even give like those little guys a chance to be an actual front line. We already have an example of a unit that has such an ability, like blinding melee attackers. It is, although it is a high tier unit of Eldars, Raise Knight I believe it is called. And people are pretty on the fence about it, because it makes him very unkillable by melee stuff. Let me even check it. While we're watching our players reposition their armies. Let's see. Alright, we're trying to settle all the way out there. I don't think this works. Again, personally, and oh, that city also blocks this tile from settling. That is annoying. But yeah, in my opinion, we want to get a couple of Orfield cities and just play the long game. Orfield cities are in fact so busted, you can just ignore Utopia mechanic entirely and just build on. Alright, so Raise Knight trait is called Scatter Shield. Let me just quickly take a look at what it does. Yeah, first of all it gives invulnerable damage reduction, but that is normal. Blinds infantry and one throws creature melee attackers. Yeah, that is the busted part. Basically halving all the damage from melee attacks. And you can see that, unlike Raise Knight, on Fire Warriors, this looks much more reasonable. Like what, you will need maybe 3 flayed ones to kill them then. And if it is too bad, we can just tune the blind itself, so it's not like minus 50%, but maybe minus 33% accuracy. On tabletop, it is much more brutal. It is straight out like 1 accuracy, which is 2 on Gladius, basically minimum accuracy possible. You only hit on 6. But yeah, the idea is just make those guys less vulnerable to this abuse. They call it abuse because that infiltrate mechanic is not something present in tabletop. In fact, on tabletop only a handful of units can ignore Overwatch, one of which is Howling Banshee. Fun unit, by the way, but definitely not as oppressive as flayed ones. So yeah, the mere fact that they can do this is already possible because of wonky translation of infiltrate and movement ranges, and it makes flayed ones, I would say, too strong against this kind of units. Which is why like photon grenade stack allowing you to blind melee attackers might actually make sense. Up for discussion, of course. You can risk your reputation by suggesting this in Tau balance patch proposals in one of the Gladius balance PvP community threads. Alright, we finally have Crisis battlesuits, and while I understand why we don't go heroes against Necron, this is the reason, I still think that maybe Tau Commander still makes sense. He is very durable, he is range 2, and he don't really need to be on front lines. But also he has very decent abilities, one of which makes Tau very strong against heavy destroyers in particular. Extra range damage reduction on units in range 3 around him helps your guys in cover very much. Alright, that is an interesting city. Not on an outpost for some reason. I mean, if we wanted desert, we could have placed it here. I guess we wanted a rock style for our ore buildings. But still an interesting decision. But of course, let's see how it works out, because we are producing some Crisis battlesuits, and with Crisis battlesuits you might actually be able to fight off flayed ones. Again, you can't sadly Overwatch them, but at least if I overextend, you can easily kill them with flamers. Which is how you want to use your crisis battle suits. I know it sounds like way better as a combat suit, being like having more armor and hit points when fire warriors, but you really don't want to frontline with one. We only have three models. They took very high damage from heavy destroyers, and they are hella expensive. So you want to use them for damage and keep them alive at all costs, because again, 60 cost unit, don't really want to lose it. Although in case of Tau, once you get into negative food, you might not want to lose your infantry units at all. Yeah, trying to protect that artifact to keep the pressure. Right now he is winning a little bit on points, and that forces Necron to either get both those artifacts or push Tau somewhere. And as I have mentioned earlier, Necron doesn't have that great of cities, especially O-wise. He basically lacks good O tiles completely, which means he will be forced to either engage poorly or to scale poorly, or maybe even both. For Tau it is very important right now to keep his cool, defend his base, and get those strong units out. Yeah, I've seen some like more casual games of Exorcist and Mr.Sleep playing together with the tournament mod. And those had some interesting things going on, lasting for a lot of turns. I think in one game I've seen them having a front line through the whole map, like splitting it apart. Looked very cool. But that is to say that Mr.Sleep at least understands that you don't have to assault enemy cities. And we have seen him play very patiently in the past. It doesn't look like he will be breaking that pattern. Sadly, those units are scouted by an outpost. Maybe he hopes that Tau will try to attack him, although he really doesn't have units in position to counterattack. Tau might even get a chance to kill something here, which would be annoying. Because despite how it looks, like you are shot on O, and I know a lot of times we hear things like if you can't build O, you should trade units. whatever. The reality is, like, it only works if you trade positively, or at least like 1-to-1 if you have very strong production or big enough army. The army itself, like, upkeep wise, looks very small. 17.5, because those are cheap units. A bit bigger army for Necron, again because he had more production for a while. But Tau does have drones, and again armies are pretty split up, so it can go both ways. You don't really want to engage like haphazardly. And in the previous tournament, Fuziorak had some very poor engagement with orcs. Looks like he learned his lesson there. Really doesn't want to push his luck with just fire warriors. By the way, no shield drones. That is another unique thing about breachers. They get more damage reduction from shield drones, might help against flayed ones, although will it make it a 2-tap? Not sure. We'll have to use a calculator to figure this one out. Maybe someone more experienced with Tau can answer that. And of course, if it doesn't move you into free tap range, it is not worth taking. At least in a more general sense. But it could still be the difference between 2 flayed ones and flayed one and a fire and a Necron warrior, for example, or an immortal. And by the way, it looks like Mr.Sleep is not a fan of immortals via tier 2 as well. You can see that what tier 2 places took over by reanimators, even if you only have one. Yeah, sadly, Immortal is that kind of unit that is very hard to justify making. It is in all regards basically a little bit better version of the warrior at an extra cost. And the saddest part for me is that even if you change their weapons, they're only available on tabletop is a better Gauss weapon, so that will make them even more like Necron warriors. Can't really have that. So we're left running around with Tesla guns of 0 AP instead. And it is actually wild how similar Necron warriors and immortals are. They are very similar in Mechanicus 2 as well, and in Battle Sector too. Battle Sector, yes, they pretty much have a little bit of cost difference, otherwise very similar units. And again, Immortals have access to those Tesla weapons. Another like fun or silly thing I realized playing Battle Sector is that it was pretty hard for Gladius devs to make a Sisters of Battle roster, because all their infantry feels like the same unit. Like it's the same infantry squad, which gets better weapon as we advance through the Sisterhood ranks. So it went on proxy shoulders to choose which sister rank should have which specialized weapons, and we ended up with Dominions having Flamers, while Retributors are having Meltaguns. Could have been other way around, and even worse, we all could have still had some kind of bolters, like heavy bolters on Retributors and combi bolters on Dominions. And even if we go into Celestians, of course we have Sacrisants, which are shield ladies. Those are kinda cool. But normal Sacrisants feel pretty much like another kind of Dominions. Yeah, meanwhile there is an engagement on the northern side of the map. Tau moving forward with his Crude Hounds, biting some flayed ones. Necron going as far as to use Necrodermis Repair, something we rarely see outside of Mr.Sleep tournament games. I think we've seen Bulky use it once. Yesterday. But general consensus is that it is by far better to funnel all your influence into economy. I mean in the long term. At least on paper it is of course better. It is why Necrons are considered as one of the strongest factions long term. You can get very population efficient with rapid rising. Right, losing a drone and a dog here drops our Fire Warrior's morale into yellow. Luckily, Necron can't engage a lot of stuff here, but also we can't really engage a Necron army here as well. Free upkeep standing around here. So yeah, I don't think we can engage this, and we really do not have to. Alright, Mr.Sleep. And yeah, that is the annoying part. You can see he just killed a couple of Fire Warrior Breachers with just a Flayed one and Necron Warrior hit. That is now some very annoying losses, losing a dog and 2 warriors. And I mean, you can see there are 3 more flayed ones as well as a reanimator. Can we really engage this? I also forgot to check if we had that is annoying running into an Overwatch with a fresh drone. Yeah, I also forgot to check if those breachers had drones, but if you think about it, they shouldn't have had any drones in them, leaving them so close to possible enemy. That is actually in range of another flayed one in the back, meaning he will have a chance to attack when he otherwise would not have had. Oh, that is the threat of doing this. You don't really know how many units there are, and now he can use those flayed ones to attack when all those guys can attack now. That is actually a couple more Fire Warriors dead. And he actually knew about those 4 units, so he willingly traded whatever is gonna die here. I still think by killing those 2 Fire Warriors. But we have our Crisis battle suit out. Does not one-shot flayed ones. So definitely needs some support. I think that is a disconnect, but by the time he returns, might be a foul situation. Well, it crashed as Mr.Sleep was moving, so most likely he was checking some of the Mr.Sleep units or something. But yeah, that is exactly the turns I was talking about. Basically, by placing drones here, you allowed extra enemy units to attack. And I think we're still going to lose that Fire Warrior. Very annoying. So that is 3 drones lost, which might not be as important if we can disengage. But if with those it's 4 drones, and if we count the one dying on Overwatch, it is 5. Not nice. And of course losing 3 Fire Warriors for 2 flayed ones, not ideal. Not, and he actually lost 2 Breachers before it as well, so it is 5 Fire Warriors for 2 flayed ones. Well, it could have been 2 Fire Warriors for 0 flayed ones. In my opinion, would have been better. Again, it is just better to defend under your cities. And flayed ones are very good at dealing with Fire Warriors. Saved by what level up. Alright, that is... It looks like Fuziorak will be tapping out here, and that was indeed not a great engagement. Oh, even disbands his domination device to let us look at the cities. Very cute. But yeah, tough engaging flayed ones. And again, my personal suggestion is that we should look at photon grenades, maybe make them into something like scatter shield, so those little guys can actually survive against melee attackers. There will still be plenty of units that can kill them, even just Necron warriors will still be doing full damage to them, but at least you won't be able to abuse them with flayed ones like this. Yeah, congratulations to Mr.Sleep on winning in this round, and he is moving on to a second round where he will be playing Bulky Winky. It will be a Necron mirror, and we will see of course how yeah, we will see if there is anything special in Necron Mirror. So yeah guys, we also should have Melix against Legion game tomorrow, 10 UTC, so see you tomorrow guys, have a great day.